Well, it's that time again for the Nikki and Reuel podcast experience. I'm Reuel Sample, joined as always by Nikki Bascome. Good evening, Nikki. How are you doing?
The lovely and wonderful and beautiful have not been on a cruise like you have, Nikki Bascome.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, last week everything that you saw had been pre-published as I have just got back from a wonderful cruise of Cozumel, Mexico, and the Grand Caymans and Jamaica, and it was just a great time to get unplugged. My wife literally took my phone and put it into a Faraday cage, so I couldn't be connected, contacted, or
Aww.
anything else. So it was wonderful. Although they do what they do now is that you actually have to keep your phones with you because that's how they contact you about things throughout the day. So even though
Like
you can
different activities that are going on and
yeah, like dancing up on the Lido deck, or
aww.
wine tasting down on the veranda deck, or all that kind of stuff. So you're not
Or put
connected to
your
the outside
clothes
world.
back on. You on the balcony, put your clothes back on. There's no naked dancing here. Is that
It's a family friendly show there, Nikki Bascom. But so, hey, by the way, I wanted to show you something. I got a couple things I wanted to show off to you tonight. First, I am drinking from the TWC coffee mug, and I'm going to stand up here real quickly. And I am wearing from our store the TWC, the Wilmington Conservative Sweatshirt. You can actually get all these things on our store, and you can order them, and they are sent to you directly. But if you are interested in helping support the Wilmington Conservative and get some great swag, check us out at thewilmingtonconservative.com and click on the store link, and we would really, really help. We'd really appreciate your support. Nikki, we've got a great, 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 great guest tonight. Who is
you?
it?
I'm kidding. I am totally kidding. That actually, this is someone that I have not stalked, but it's someone that I have a lot of respect for. And I don't talk about. I talk about my kids a lot, but I don't talk about my husband a lot. And this is someone that's been friends with my husband for years and years and years. And I actually met him not through the political world, but through my husband. And I would love to introduce the former executive director of Hanover County GOP, Harry Knight. Harry, welcome. Thank you for joining us. There he is.
Hey guys, thank you and thank you for having me.
It's great
Yeah.
having you on board, Harry. It's for those who don't know, Harry was the as Nikki said, the former executive director. And every time he would call me, I would answer the phone and say, "Hello, Mr. Executive Director," and it would drive him nuts. And so it's good to have you, Harry. By the way, I've been going back and forth about what to name this podcast tonight, and I have come up with the perfect name. Ready? Here we go.
Night
It's the
court.
Night Court with Harry Knight.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes before the evening's over.
So, welcome to the Night
I,
Court with Harry Knight, as we talk about a whole variety of things. So, Harry, you're involved in a whole bunch of areas here in New Hanover County. You're a real estate guy. You're involved in politics. You're one of the shakers and movers of New Hanover, and you've done it all. Are you a New Hanover County? No, you're from West Virginia originally, aren't you?
Yep, I grew up in small town West Virginia on a small family farm. Got a degree in engineering. Went to work for the General Electric Company under contract to the DOE, DOD, and worked for a facility in upstate New York that supported the United States Nuclear Navy.
oh, wow.
Coming out of that, after about 15 years, I came here to Wilmington to be the environmental health and safety manager for nuclear manufacturing. Spent about a decade or so doing that, and then I spent 5 or so years being one of their international project directors for in reactor upgrades, mostly for our foreign customers, but I also helped perform a instrumentation grade upgrade for one of our domestic reactors that's the largest at the time in U.S. history.
So,
Wow.
so, so that glow around him is not his natural aura, ladies and gentlemen. That's just from the nuclear reactors that he's been around for all this time.
Well, some people claim that. We'll see.
Well, we're not going to play around, Harry. We want to get into a couple big things because you were involved heavily in the Republican Party here in New Hanover County, and we had a huge election in terms of getting people elected throughout the state and throughout the New Hanover County. This is a tough county, and people have been a little bit critical of how the Republican Party went about doing things here in New Hanover County. Can you take some time to explain the numbers of why, for instance, New Hanover County didn't go for Trump like a lot of the other counties across the country did?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. Um, Going into this election, and this would be, 2 months prior to November the 4th, so early fall, New Hanover County is what people would typically think that we would be over the last decade or so, and that's called a purple county.
Hmm.
The numbers at that point would have said we're basically one third independent or unaffiliated, one third Republican, and one third Democrat. It's not exactly that, but it's pretty close. So we went into this with the strategy of, get all of the Republicans and then get the Republican leading independents to the polls and get them all to vote.
Yeah.
And that's the strategy we employed through a number of various means. Both you as well as Nikki were involved in some of that. At the end of the day, we were fairly successful with that. Um, you opened the conversation with the Trump race. Just to put that in perspective, and I'm sure there'd be a number of people that wouldn't agree with what I'm about to say, but the reality of the numbers were both the Trump campaign and the North Carolina GOP predicted that New Hanover County would lose the Trump race by 3 percentage points. We were asked to maintain a less than a 2% percentage point loss, which is what we needed in order for Trump to win to win North Carolina, which he did, obviously. And in New Hanover County specifically, we lost that Trump race by less than a 0.5%. So based on what we were asked to do versus what predictions were, New Hanover County turned out big for Trump. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, the absolute vote count went for Kamala Harris, but based on what the predictions were, we overperformed, and as a result, Trump won the state. So I think the New Hanover County GOP did exactly what they were asked to do and did it well.
And more so because, as you said, we were asked to keep it under 2 to 3 points because they knew we were going to lose, but we came in well above their expectations.
That's right. Yeah, we were asked to keep it to less than a 2% loss, and we were able to hold that at about a 0.5%.
And now locally, we also we basically kept the status quo. We lost a Republican on the board on the Board of Education, and we put a Republican back on the Board of Education. We
Well, that's one way to put that. I would say that we lost a Republican that had an R behind their name, but in the 4 years serving on that board, never voted in a Republican fashion, and we put a person on that board that will vote in a Republican fashion. Now, that particular person is an interesting individual, but at the end of the day, when they go to vote, they're going to vote Republican. He
they're
will
go
be an absolute reliable Republican vote, and At the end of the day, that's what counts because, like you said, I'm involved in politics on a number of different levels here locally as well as on the state. I happen to sit on several appointed boards, including a statewide appointed board. And at the end of the day, the performance of those boards is how does that board vote? You mean, how do you implement policies? And the particular person that we put on that board will be controversial in some things, but they will be a reliable Republican vote. At the end of the day, that's what counts.
Nikki Bascome is over there seriously thinking about having another drink of vodka as we continue, because of course
Probably because Nikki was one of our better candidates for that board, and for a whole number of reasons, none of them Nikki's fault, quite frankly. It has to do with the dynamics of New Hanover County. She was unsuccessful in her bid to make it to the Board of Education. That is very unfortunate for that board. She would have been a valuable member.
I agree.
I was just talking to someone about that today when so apparently one of the Democrat appointed to the board that were voted on the board has been all over social media just really trash talking Republicans, and this Democrat came to me and said, we're going to have these culture wars between the Republicans and the Democrats. And I was like, but what kills me is how did we manage as a community? How did we manage to get such extremes from both sides? We have extreme Republicans and extreme Democrats on this board from a community that says we don't want politics in our schools. Then what the hell are you doing? Sorry. I can't help it. I'm like,
the data is still to come in from the state level, but what you just said is accurate. Mm-hmm. And that New Hanover County Board of Elections race was one of the strangest races I have ever seen in the 10 years that I've been involved behind the scenes. It was just weird.
Well, so I'm a data girl. I follow the data a lot. And when you're looking at the vote counts, the percentage points that happened in the Board of Education followed the percentage points that happened in the county race, the commissioner race, which followed very closely to what happened to all of the higher races, all the state races, which tells me it was people that were coming out for a purpose of voting down ballot, and that's what they did. They didn't care. They didn't care what anyone's policies were. They didn't care what if one person was good or one person was bad. They went down ballot race, period, end of story. That's all they did. And there's on both sides of the spectrum, you've got some really good Democrats and you've got some really good Republicans that are going to come together and make some really good policies and some really good changes for our community, especially at the local level. People weren't looking at that. They didn't care. They did not care whatsoever. So the percentage points just followed right along the state and the federal level. That's my 2 cents.
Now, Harry, it'll be...
Yeah. And you had some pretty polarizing figures at the top end of the tickets, right? So you had Trump, which, like him or hate him, he is a polarizing figure.
Mm-hmm.
He is.
And he will do good things for the state. He'll do good things for the city. We had a very polarizing lieutenant governor race. And between those two races, you just had a lot of strong opinions that bled down the ballot. Whether you like it or not, that's what happened.
Did you mean the governor race or the lieutenant? Lieutenant governor was okay. I think it was the governor's race with Mark Robinson.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the governor's race is what I'm talking about. That's right.
That was a very polarizing. I think here locally that was extremely polarizing. If you were a Republican and you did not support Mark Robinson, then you had issues with some of your friends.
It is still polarizing behind the scenes, and probably will be for a period of time.
And again, There were big issues with Mark Robinson, but I hold fast to the idea that the primary is about the individual, the general is about the party, and if you didn't like Mark Robinson, and you were a Republican and you didn't vote for him, well, guess what? You are part of the problem of what we have now. If you voted for the individual and not for the party, and because of that, the party is not in control of North Carolina anymore.
Well, we are in control of North Carolina, but, and it's a big but, Governor Stein has veto capability because we're missing one representative in one of our House chambers in the legislature. Now, in all likelihood, because of a lot of the stuff that is going on, you'll get a Democrat that will cross lines, and the North Carolina, clearly Republican legislature will be able to continue to lead the state just like we did with Governor Roy Cooper. But you're completely right. So whether you like Mark Robinson or hate Mark Robinson, if Mark Robinson was the governor, the nice thing about that would have been he would have done what the legislature would have asked him to do, which is in the real world what typically should control a state. Now, obviously, a governor has some powers, and one of those is veto power, to keep things balanced. But Mark would have been a decent governor. Our current governor is yet to be seen, so we'll see how he performs. But based on some history of him, I have a prediction that I won't share here, but I think will become obvious in about 6 months.
Well, we've got a terrible AG. Our Attorney General has already joined lawsuits against the 14th Amendment thing that Trump has laid down. Even though the vast majority of the state would probably agree with President Trump about the 14th Amendment and anchor babies and everything else, but the state of North Carolina is actively joining that lawsuit against the Trump administration.
That's right. And at the end of the day, and this is just my personal opinion, it's hard to say what Trump's strategy is, but it's clearly obvious that part of his strategy is to make that issue front and foremost on a nationwide basis. I don't think he expects that his executive order or any of that will have an immediate effect. He is purposely trying to get that in front of the United States Supreme Court, and he will likely be successful, knowing him and his personality. And we'll just have to see how that breaks down, because if you actually go back, and I haven't done specific research on it, but the 14th Amendment was written in order to free the slaves, give the slaves, citizenship, and give them the full rights of a full citizen, including their children. I don't think at the time that was written that there was any thoughts whatsoever that would have applied to somebody that was in our country illegally, that somehow their children would now become citizens. Unfortunately, in the legal world, that's not exactly how the words in that amendment are written. And there actually has been a couple of Supreme Court cases that have fallen on the side of, if you were born here, you're a citizen here. So there's actual Supreme Court precedent cases that say that. It's probably going to be an interesting legal battle, and at the end of the day, it may require an actual change to the 14th Amendment. Now, whether or not you can do that, who knows?
Well,
you also might come up to the case of where the Supreme Court justices decide that the intent wasn't there, and regardless of the words, that's not what they meant, and fall on Trump's side. So we're going to see how that falls.
Because there's some folks who are taking the other side. Is that it says that the parents have to be subject to the laws of the country, and I guess they're even referring to the writings of some of the folks who wrote that amendment, and that is what they meant, is that they specifically just meant the slaves not anyone else. But just like the Federalist Papers are not law in this country, neither are the thoughts of the people who wrote that amendment are relevant either. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's Trump's doing it right. He
Mm-hmm.
is teeing it up for a public battle in front of the United States Supreme Court. And whether that results in the Supreme Court deciding that the intent was clear enough that you need to read it the way they read the intent, or whether or not they come down and say, well, you actually need to change the words. I have no way of knowing how they're going to fall on that, but it's going to come down to that eventually.
Well,
Wow.
yeah, it's going to be and I'm going to say it's going to be an interesting 2 years because they really actually have just 18 months to get this stuff done because then we get back
That's
into
right.
elections again.
And the reason Trump may win that one is think about it on a scale of perspectives view. The 14th Amendment clearly does not allow for children of diplomats. So these are people that are in our country legally,
Okay.
and their children are not citizens of the United States.
Exactly.
So why would somebody think that the converse of that would also be true? You are a person that is clearly in the country, not a citizen. Why that person's child would now become a citizen? So there's some very good bases out there in the 14th Amendment itself that says that's not what was intended.
The sheer numbers of the sheer numbers of the problem is there are more babies being born to illegal immigrants than there are to legal immigrants, and the numbers are fast approaching the numbers of our births to naturalized or American citizens to begin with. It's a huge problem. Go ahead, Nikki.
Or just someone that's visiting happens to visit and goes into labor and has a baby. It doesn't. I didn't have anything major to say. Just
Well,
it
Well,
just
that's
mine.
yeah, that's right. And I don't know if it's still active or not, but a decade, 15, 20 years ago, we used to deny entry to pregnant people for that very reason. If you were 6 months pregnant, you were not allowed entry into the country for that reason. Now I
yeah.
don't know if
Crazy.
that's still the policy or not, but that used to be a policy of the United States
It
for
used
that
to be
very
called
reason.
Yeah, it used to be called birth tourism. Is that there is
Yeah.
and it was actually big from the eastern from the Asian countries. Is that
Yep.
it was a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
all right, so
Never heard
let's.
of it.
Oh, it was huge. Okay, so let's move on from the 14th to Doge, Musk's whole thing about government efficiency, and Harry, we're all business people here. We all run businesses. We all run our families and stuff like that. And well, Nikki, you have to run your local.
See, what are you talking about, Nikki? You run Surfers Healing. That's a
You run
business whether you
Surfer
like it
Store.
or not.
That's right.
We surf children with autism. We have fun. That's
Right,
Yeah,
but you still have
but
to.
if you don't, but if you don't operate that organization such that it has the resources it needs to continue to exist, you can't provide that service that you provide. So whether
with
you,
integrity. With integrity.
I didn't say
There's
anything about not doing it integrity, but
but I
if
think that's what the Doge is going to start making sure of is that if you're running things, you need to have integrity
And
oof.
accountability. And that's the big thing that has happened this week. Two things have come down, Harry, is that first off, he's basically shuttered U.S. aid. And number two, he's basically called out members of the Treasury who are making payments to terrorists and other enemies of the state without question. Are we going to
Yeah.
see more from Elon Musk on this stuff?
I suspect so. And the USAID one is just a great example. So I am sure, and I don't know that much about USAID, but I am sure there is a lot of good that USAID provides.
Yeah.
The flip side to that is USAID has become an unaccountable bureaucracy that doesn't think it needs to answer to anybody. In fact, they've even publicly stated that they're independent. They do what they want. Well, that's not how this works, folks, because it's all taxpayer funded money. And if the taxpayers don't want it going there, then guess what? You end up where you are today when somebody finally notices and goes, wait a minute, what the heck is all of this? And Elon Musk is one of the perfect guys that will just go, what the heck is this? Because he doesn't care. You're not going to affect his lifestyle. The guy's a billionaire, self-made, multi-million, many times over. Do you think you can threaten that guy? Come on. He's going to do what he wants to do.
What? Okay, so the craziest part the irony of it all is everyone is talking about how Elon Musk is put in this position, but we're looking into the USAID as an executive order and starting to dismantle it. But it was actually put in place by an executive order. So you're looking at it going, what was it, a Congress type thing? What was this, a foundation that really had a whole lot of oomph behind it? But it was just an executive order that started it.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. It probably started something similar to that. I do believe that there is some legislative backing behind it at some point, but the current U.S. aid as it exists today has run well afoul of whatever that legislative mandate was.
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I saw them this morning. Is the things that they're spending on the like $35,000 for an LGBTQ drama in Peru,
Right.
$10,000 for a transvestite celebration in Colombia. I mean, it was exporting the culture of the far left at taxpayer expense. It was just horrid what they were doing, and again, it was overshadowing the good stuff that USAID was designed to do. But Harry, one of the things that this might end up actually forcing our legislatures to finally start doing is oversight. They give their power away to bureaucracies. They give their power away to the courts, and they're finally having to say, no, we're the keepers of the purse strings.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where I'm 100% sure that it is a target rich environment, and Musk probably has feelers every freaking where. There is any number of government programs that just run on auto, including programs that exist today that is actually no longer funded by the legislature, but they just continue to operate. And I will bet
Yep.
you dollars to donuts that Trump will figure out where that stuff is and land it right on the front page. USA just happens to be the first one. Give him a month, there'll be another one. Guarantee you.
Oh, five. There's gonna be five. There's gonna be a whole lot. I'm sorry. He's and everything's gonna land on the front page. They're not gonna let anything that they feel like they can put against him is gonna be front page. All of it.
Now, one of the great things that's happening is this whole idea of government accountability in terms of finances is actually taking root here in New Hanover County as Dane Scalise takes on the DEI programs here in New Hanover County, and he's tackling them not from a culture perspective, but he's tackling them from a financial accountability perspective, which, Harry, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and Dane's got I mean, I don't know what Dane's doing specifically and what his plan is, but he's got a couple of things that's working in his favor right this minute. You've got the 4-year property tax reevaluation coming, which means the county commissioners, for approval of the 25-26 budget, is going to have to adjust the tax rate associated with that property reevaluation. Now, I would have thought, just based on my experience, that in the 4 years we'd be looking at a 35-40% increase in property values. I'm being told from behind the scenes from some very credible sources that number is looking more like 55 to 60% as an average across the board. So if you take the stance of revenue neutral, which will be the stance that I take, and it's the stance you saw me take 4 years ago when we tried to do this, in order to do revenue neutral, what you're going to have to do is cut waste, fraud, and abuse that equals the amount of whatever inflation was last year. That's just kind of how the math works. So that is your perfect opportunity to declare we're going to go revenue neutral, and then you take out 10, 15%. I don't know what the exact number is, but if you're going to talk about a 55, 60% increase, it's probably going to be at a 10 or 15% number for last year, where you're going to have to identify waste, fraud, and abuse and other programs that just aren't that valuable and start scaling those budgets back. And anything associated with DEI is a perfect target for that, because that's just funding that you can get rid of so that you can go to a revenue neutral budget.
Yeah, and you're right. It is target rich. According to an article published by Jonathan Bridges on the Wilmington Conservative today, is some of these numbers coming out of the DEI, the diversity office, is amazing. The director of diversity is paid $168,000 a year, and there are 5 other employees on there in there, and only $60,000 goes actually into diversity programs. It is an amazing chunk of money that's going into supporting folks who have really their only job in life is to make other people think less of themselves.
Yeah, I would have to go.
I need a job.
Yeah, I would have to go and look and see what Jonathan wrote. I haven't written that, but Jonathan's usually a pretty credible source. I know the numbers as of last week that were publicized. It was like 600,000 and change associated with the program in total, and 450 to 500,000 of that was nothing but salaries.
It is absolutely astounding. The people are basically getting rich off of this whole DEI thing, and in the end, they're not doing anything. It's astounding, and I think all of this is happening. Whether it's USAID, whether it is the Treasury Department, or whether it's here in New Hanover County, it's happening because of this absolute disgust of government unaccountability that Elon Musk is targeting.
Yeah, now's the time to do it because you have the attention. So if you're going to do it, now's it. And like I said earlier, because you got to do this budget reconciliation anyway, it's the perfect time to target waste, fraud, and abuse, and a lot of those programs would fall into that aspect of it. So you just defund them.
But at the same time, while the county is considering all of this, with these new evaluations coming out, the city of Wilmington last year voted to raise property taxes by 7%. And yet at the same time cut their services. Harry, what's going to go on with that? We've got municipals coming on. Is that going to be? Are we going to be able to address that in this upcoming election?
Well, the municipals, the municipals are lining up to be
Sure. Good answer, Harry. Good answer.
the municipals are lining up to be interesting. So
Mhm.
let's give the 10,000 foot view of what that looks like, and I'm going to talk about Wilmington because I'm not as deep into what the beach towns may look like, but the Wilmington voting district is primarily Democrat. It's probably 65-35, and I'm just guessing. I haven't
Hmm.
looked up the numbers. Um, as far as I know, Luke Waddell will rerun. Charlie Rivenbark is not. He does have a preferred candidate that I've actually met and know that will be a great candidate, and we should work to get him elected. And I don't know if there is a third Republican out there to take on the current Democrat filling a seat that's up for reelection.
Maybe
Then
maybe
you've
some
got the
maybe somebody in the real estate that has white hair.
nope. And then you have the mayor's race. There is
Yes.
a lot of rumor out there that Bill is not going to run. I personally think that's a load of bull. I think Bill will run. I don't think there's much question about that. And I'll find out for certain next week because he happens to sit on another board with me. But there
And
is a
you'll
lot
come
of
back and
rumor out there.
report to us
But
so
there's
that
a
we
lot
have
of
the
rumor
proof.
out there that Barfield will run for mayor and may, in fact, even challenge Bill.
Really, two Democrats change. Two Democrats. So, so there might be have to be a Democrat prime. Or no, there is no such thing as a primary in the municipals. So it'll be a split ticket on the
It's a
Democrat
free
side.
for all. That's right. It's a free for all. And if you'll remember 4 years ago, you had a left leaning Democrat challenge Bill and got within 2 percentage points.
That's right.
You'll also remember that the current GO or not the current, the previous GOP leadership, it got so close that they got nervous that you were going to have a true left wing liberal potentially in the mayor's office because it's a technically nonpartisan race that the new Hanover County GOP endorsed Bill Sappho as a Democrat in order to make sure that he got through that race and won because we didn't have another Republican challenger. And that created quite a stir in your activist groups with the New Hanover County Republicans. But you got
If
to
they
ask these people the question, so would you rather have Bill Sappho or would you rather have the
or
guy that's now currently sitting in jail, which is what he's doing? He's in jail that ran against Bill Sappho.
Or the even better question is that the mayor of Wilmington has a lot less powers than mayors in other cities across the country. He's a vote on city council. He's an
That's right.
administrative vote.
He's the head of the city council, and he's one vote out of seven.
Right. So if we can't get the mayor's spot, we really also need to focus on those city council spots as well. And you say that we all say that it's a nonpartisan race, but let's face it, it really is partisan. There is that there's no R's or D's next to people's names on the ballots, but they are R's and D's. They are Republicans and the Democrats, and people have to be aware of that.
That's very true, but it's not publicized or ran that way.
Yeah.
But yes, in the real world, it's absolutely still political.
Hey, real quickly, I went back to the Wilmington Conservative, Wilmington's newest publication for conservative ideas. And this is from Jonathan's article, quote, a costly distraction, which is the DEI, of $600,000 a year, most of which funds 5 county employees, including a chief diversity officer who is the 13th highest paid employee with a salary of $170,000. He gets paid more than the chief deputy. He gets paid more than the chief deputy, the emergency management director, and the fire chief.
Gosh,
I have no
needed
reason
you.
to doubt that isn't true because I'm sure John looked it up on public records. But
That's right. After salaries, only about $70,000 goes towards programs and
yeah,
operating
and I was going to say
expenses.
that matches what I read a week ago. It's 600 plus budget,
Hmm.
and 450, 500 of that is nothing but salaries. So yeah, that all matches with what I think I know.
The, the interesting thing is
So
that it. Go ahead, Nikki.
it just makes me beg to ask when these new programs are coming about in the city, county, or even at the state and federal level, you have to start looking at if it's a new program. I do a lot of grant writing, and one of the things that you have to have is a measurable outcome and a time bound outcome. And what was their measurable outcome for this program? What we're giving all this money to it, but what exactly was the measurable outcome? How do you measure the DEI process? How do you measure that? And what was their time bound? I can't get my head around that. And I don't care if anyone says that's a culture war or not. I just want to know, what is the measurable outcome from that? Any anybody?
That's a good question. I would imagine, and I'm guessing, but it's an educated guess that one of their objectives, being an employee associated with that, is to do exactly what you just said, was grant writing to get their hands on the endowment money.
Hmm.
So you'd have to go look and see how many endowment grants or gifts were given to that organization or written by that organization to find out where all the money is going. Because clearly all of the money clearly isn't coming from the county itself. So I would suspect if you did a deep dive into there, you would find their fingerprints on a lot of endowment
And
Amazing.
activity.
speaking of the endowment, is so many people are upset over the sale of the hospital, and the endowment fund should go to our school system. So I would like to, let's put this out there. If anyone is a grant writer or is familiar with grant writing, please help our schools get some of this endowment money. I know that we were able to get the literacy program started, and we were able to get a little bit of money, but why is our whole community not getting behind our schools on this? We've got some wonderful talent. Apparently someone in the DEI program is great at grant writing and able to get this endowment money. Let's start bringing it back to our schools. That's where we need it. Let's stop fooling ourselves.
Yeah, and
And
that's a good point, Nikki, because
yeah,
that is one of the stated objectives of that endowment is to do things for education. That's one of
Yep.
the authorized purposes of that endowment fund.
So,
oh,
Harry,
I hate to always bring everything back to our schools, but
I know.
that
Maybe you should run for school board at some point in time, Nikki.
mentioned that before. I think I might.
Hey, Harry, the other things that's been going on this week is foreign policy, including immigration reform. The numbers are in. Border crossings are down almost 60% in just the 2 or 3 weeks that Trump has been in office. Uh, El Salvador has opened up its prisons. They have said, "Send us all your illegal immigrants who are held in prison. Just pay us like a per person fee, and we'll take them in." Venezuela is taking people back. Uh, this is an amazing turnaround of things, Harry.
Well, what I mean, this is going to sound bad, but what do you expect when you have somebody that says the border is closed and they mean it?
Yeah.
And they mean it.
Yeah, and what the difference is going to be. I mean, it was literally like flipping a switch. Trump comes into office, says the border is closed, fires up a bunch of airplanes and ICE officers, and starts kicking a bunch of convicted criminals out everybody else gets the message and they stop coming. And it's not complicated. It's the border's closed and they believe him.
Yeah, and it's not just the southern border. You've got the northern border now getting closed, and Trump's that's amazing, isn't it? And then the Trump's tariffs against Canada and Mexico have now been suspended because Canada and Mexico have gotten onto the idea that they need to secure the border from their side or else face economic consequences. Harry, this is amazing stuff.
Well, the difference is you've got a guy in office now that runs it like a business. And whether people like that or not, that's just the way that he's going to run it because that's what he does. Now, you can agree or disagree with, his philosophy and whether the government ought to be run as a business, but that's what the people voted for overwhelmingly. We haven't had a president get elected on the Republican side that kept the House, took the House, kept the Senate, or took the Senate, kept the House, won the electoral vote, and won the popular vote.
And won the popular vote.
It's been 45 years since that's happened.
So the question is that will Republicans be able to do it properly? Even today, the Republicans in the House, in my opinion, have really screwed things up because they put off a budget bill that should have gone through. The big question is that if Republicans govern like Republicans, I maintain that midterms should not be as difficult as people think they are, as they can be. But Republicans got to be smart in these next 18 months.
Midterms are always going to be tough. And midterms are always going to be tough when it comes to, the 2-year cycle after a presidential election. Mm-hmm. Because, whether you like it or not, all of this stuff, while the three of us would say is being disruptive in the good direction, you will have a whole bunch of people that will say it's being disruptive in the bad direction. So you'll see blue counties elect more blue people, red counties elect more red people, and then all of those in the middle will decide where the House sits. It's just the nature of politics. And it's simply because everybody's got to get reelected every 2 years. I would guess that
is a lot.
Right.
Holy cow.
And for our county and for our state
all the time.
Yeah, and for our county and for our state, you've got the additional complication of we've got a US Senate seat up for re-election in 2026.
And so to run in 2026, you're looking at filing the end of this year. So
that's right.
So we're jumping in as soon as municipals are done. You're jumping right into the 2026 filing to run and getting all those gears and
all of the federal elections, the Senate seat specifically, any of those serious candidates are already starting. So yes. Now you've got Tillis. Tillis is definitely running. He's already raising money. I'm willing to bet anybody on this podcast or anybody listening a beer that Trump will endorse him before March.
Yes.
Which will cause some consternations behind the scenes to a whole bunch of people. And then you've got all the state people, because both our House and our Senate in the state have to rerun every 2 years. So you're going to have Ted, Charlie, and Mike all up for re-election again.
Yep. I've heard a lot of chatter about people wanting to primary Tillis. So there is someone that's going to run against Tillis.
There is one declared candidate already that I know of.
And regardless of what happens between that in that primary, I have heard, and this might be rumor, that Cooper is going for that seat. To whomever is going to win that primary with Tillis and this other gentleman, that they might be going up against Cooper. Have you heard anything about that?
That's no rumor. Roy Cooper will run.
Oh,
And unless you like two names, Senator Roy Cooper and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and you're planning on running for North Carolina Senate seat, you better be able to beat Roy Cooper. If you can't beat Roy Cooper, stay the hell out of it.
And Roy Cooper has won 2 statewide elections here in North Carolina.
Roy Cooper, like him or hate him, will be an absolute monster of a candidate to beat. And the reason, and people are going to hate what I'm about to say, but Roy Cooper will be able to take credit for 8 years as a successful Democrat governor in a red state. He basically had jack squat to do with it because it was our North Carolina legislature that did it all. But at the end of the day, he was the governor, and he will and can take credit. He will be a monster to beat in that Senate race.
Which means Republicans have to be smart. We've got to take this next 3 or 4 months and find a good challenger to him, and then no matter who wins the primary, Republicans have got to get behind him. There's a lot of folks who don't like Tillis. You've got to vote for him. You just have to vote for him. So it's going to be interesting.
Those races are underwater 3D chess, no matter how much a bunch of our activist group think you're playing checkers. You ain't playing checkers.
Actually,
I love these activist groups. Come on, they're so sweet.
And actually, I was thinking of naming this podcast Harry Knight Playing Chess in a Checkers World, but I decided to go with Night Court because my wife picked that one out.
But I mean, it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get into a general election, it's what do you want, and we'll talk about the Senate seat specifically. What do you want the United States Senate to look like? Because North Carolina is a bellwether county, or North Carolina is a bellwether state, so you might as well go into that thinking that however North Carolina falls is how the Senate's going to fall. So you need a Republican senator in 2026 if you don't want Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. It's as simple as that.
Yep. So, now let's switch to what's happening locally. We have a Republican convention coming up in March, and we have, you were the executive director of our local GOP, and you're not running, and we have two name slates as of right now. Do you have any advice for anyone going into convention or anyone going into some of these leadership roles? Do you have advice for them going into what sounds like some seriously contentious elections coming up? What do you have to say to them, Harry?
2025 and 2026 are going to be critical elections for this state as well as the national level because of that Senate seat. And New Hanover County is a complicated county. I will tell you one of the errors that I think we made in 2024, and I didn't get into this kind of detail in the previous discussion with it, but if you look at what voter registrations look like today in New Hanover County, you will find that the unaffiliated is now closer to 50%, not a third.
It's huge.
Right.
Huge.
You'll find that the Democrats are slightly ahead of the Republicans. So let's call it 26% Democrats, 25% Republicans, and 48% unaffiliated. And then you've got 1 or 2% of the mixed bag of other stuff. And I think we don't have the data from the state yet at this level, but I think that unaffiliated vote broke 65-35 on the Democrat side, where the data that we were operating on in October, we would have said it was 50-50. We were wrong. So I think one of the errors that we made going into November is we chased get out the vote efforts too close to the middle. We should have stayed more on the right side, because I think we inadvertently drove unaffiliateds to the polls that potentially voted Democrat when we should have ignored them. So one of the things that no matter who wins in this, county leadership decision in early March, they need to get into those numbers and understand what those voter demographics are. And they need to recognize that those voter demographics are real. Whether they like it or not, doesn't matter, because those are the people that are going to come out to vote in 2025 and 2026. And if you're operating off of something different than what that data tells you, you're going to lose.
And it really is a data war, isn't it? You have to know the data so that you know how to target your folks, because Republicans will vote Republicans, Democrats will vote Democrats. Those folks in the middle, or the unaffiliated or independents, they are more issue oriented than ever. And if we're not hitting on the right issues, or if we're sending a mixed bag, or as what happened in 2022, where Republicans were just all over the place, we shoot ourselves in the foot all the time, we're going to lose again. And 2026 is a huge year for us. And if our leadership doesn't have that.
One of the very key things that the county party can do is the get out the vote effort. Reuel, you are involved in a lot of that. Nikki, you are obviously involved in a lot of that from your own campaign level perspective. But
I tried to be.
You from a strategy standpoint, and this is just strategy, you need as high as possible turnout of Republican voters. So from a turnout perspective, we actually turned out 86% of the Republican voters, what we thought were Republican voters, based on the data, which is a very high level. So we did a very good job of that. And that's the reason we were able to hold, both of our North Carolina legislature seats, hold our North Carolina Senate seat.
And we flipped the DA.
Able to keep Trump at less than 1% loss rate here. But I think from a local level, some of the races we could have done a little bit better at, but we were making decisions based on, Nikki, yours is a special case. We need a case of Jack Daniels to talk about it.
Nikki is special, Harry.
Jack Daniels to go over your race. But from a bigger picture perspective, we probably
the Crown Royal at this point.
We probably drove Democrat voters to the polls that we shouldn't have driven, based on our belief that we were at a 50-50 split and not the 65-35 that we were at. If I had to do it over again, there's some of those groups that we tried to get out to the polls that I would ignore. If I was going to do something different, that's what I would do different.
That actually falls the historic lines of independents. They've always broken 60-40 Democrats. They've always voted 6, and we thought that they would not this year or last year, that they would go 50-50, and we were wrong.
We were wrong.
And the decisions were made based on data. I mean, we had the data to back it up. It just, people are people and they're funny animals. We were just wrong. It swung way more Democrat than we thought it would.
That's right. Harry Knight.
So speaking of
Nikki.
Convention, it's coming up on March the 3rd. So if you're a Republican, if you are a registered Republican by January 30th or 31st.
January 31st of this year.
31st. If you're a registered Republican of January 31st, please make plans to be at the Republican County Convention on March the 3rd. Registration opens, I want to say February 27th. Is
No,
that correct?
February 17th. Registration
Oh,
opens.
17th.
And it
Registration
closes.
opens.
That's right. It opens February 17th and it closes, I think, February 27th or whatever that Thursday is before the convention. So the
So
cost.
everyone
Yeah.
listening, please make plans to be at the convention on March the 3rd. Make sure you register, and I'm going to make sure that Reuel is posting it on our social media so that you know how to register, how much it costs, when to be there. Doors will close at 6:30 on that day on March the 3rd. So make sure you're in line before 6:30 so that you can make it into the convention. Harry, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure hearing all of your wisdom.
I don't know about wisdom, but how about experience? And you get some good for both.
You called me special, so we're going with whatever you want.
No, it was great being on. Happy to come back anytime you guys want to.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Former Executive Director. Always good to see you. And I'm going to put you back in the green room and we'll catch up soon. Thanks again, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, Nikki, yet another great pod. Boy, I love having him on. You know, he's just a wealth of information. I've enjoyed working with him over the last 2 years. He's just an amazing guy.
You know what, Reuel? Let's get serious here for a minute. I'm a woman. I can be emotional, and during my campaign, and so I am just a genuine. My husband tells me all the time, you don't have to be honest with everyone because not everyone, first off, appreciates your honesty. And second off, people are going to use your honesty against you. And so I started listening to my husband a little bit more. And one of the things that he told me was trust Harry. He was like, Harry's going to be one of those people that is 100% honest with you. You're not going to like what he says. And my husband told me that. He was like, you may not like what he says, but I guarantee you 100% he's going to be honest with you and you never question where you stand with him.
Yes.
And if that's not someone that you need in your corner, then I don't know what it is that you need. I expect that of people around me. I'm not going to like what you say, and I might not talk to you for a few days, but I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me, hey, your fly is down, your shoes are untied, and you are a complete and total menace. But I mean, isn't that what we expect of people? We might not like what they say, but wouldn't you want honesty? I would rather you be honest and to my face than behind my back.
Oh, exactly. There are times we were there in the comms team, and the comms team takes a lot of heat from a variety of ways. Is that people don't like us because we're trying to get a message out, and we're trying to do all this stuff, and we're there we're getting hit from different sides, and we're trying to figure out what to do, and Harry would walk in the room and just remind us all that we're supposed to be the adults in the room, and just go forward. Good luck, but it was always. That's not water, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I grabbed the wrong one. I did say we were switching to Reuel, right?
So, but I'm also honored to have Harry as a friend, and there's been times where we've texted back and forth for quite a while on everything. So it's great to have him on board. So. Nikki, let's move to before we move to our trivia, is that just want to remind everybody that please like and subscribe so that you can see us on all of your major podcast platforms. We are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Truth Social. We're out there. So
everywhere.
We are everywhere except we're not on Blue Sky. And the reason why we're not on Blue Sky is we yeah, well, we realize that if we go on Blue Sky, the liberals will have nowhere else to run, and they'll be out there in the cold. So we let them have Blue Sky, as their safe space. So yeah, we'll do that.
Oh,
So Nikki,
we're being nice. We're being
we are
nice
being
and
nice. So yeah, but so Nikki, last time we talked about our trivia. The trivia question was,
when did New Hanover County become its own county? Which is a trick question. Did we have any responses? I don't think we did.
I didn't see any responses.
These people, okay, so I hope that everyone starts responding to these, because I'm going to start having some prizes. But anyway, it's a trick question because New Hanover County became its own county in 1729, but it wasn't called a county. It was called a precinct. So 1729, and it became a precinct of Bath, and it was called the House of Hanover in 1729.
Wow.
Little known facts.
Known facts.
So I know. And so it was 1734, Bladen and Onslow County became their own precinct from New Hanover. So that's when they separated from New Hanover. So our question is going to be, in what year did they actually become counties and not precincts anymore?
Now, if you go on our website, down at the bottom of each page, there's a little comment section, and you can leave your answers there, or your reaction to our podcast there. You can leave your reaction on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble. We would really, really love to hear from you. And also, don't forget to pick up your swag at the Wilmington Conservative. We've got T-shirts and mugs and everything else, so please consider getting all that. Now, Nikki is not going to be here next week, so we will have a guest. We will have a guest host with us next week who will keep that, because we're working on it. But it's going to be special. It's going to be, in this day and age of Trump, we can say it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the greatest.
That's a really big feat to fill. You have to be able to switch from vodka to Crown Royal depending on how the podcast is going. And you got to cut, and you have to remember your trivia question, or you can text message Reuel in the middle of your podcast and ask, did we have a trivia question? And maybe he'll tell you.
But we do have a really great guest next week. She is the executive director of the Good Shepherd House here in Wilmington. Yeah, it's going to be a great show. So, Nikki, good talking with you, folks. This has been the Nikki and Reuel podcast experience. I'm Reuel Sample.
And I think I'm Nikki Bascome. We'll figure it out later.
It depends on how many of those drinks that she's had before and during our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Trivia question. Sorry.
Yeah. Have a great night, everyone.